that. Let me just double check that we're beaming to the universe, and there we are. All right, good. And that lets the folks in. Let's see here. All right. Welcome, one and all. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's great to see everyone today. As always, we got some familiar faces, some new faces, getting some newer faces in as we go here. I'm just seeing Glenn here. Hi, Glenn. Thanks for waving right when I'm noticing you, and I believe I see a harp in the background, which I don't never notice that you do some harping there. Some kind of it's a real harp, it looks like.
Yeah, I can talk to you now and mute it.
Yeah.
That is a full-size lever harp that I built myself, designed it, and completely built it by hand, including all the carvings and everything else.
Wow, that is really cool.
Yeah. So,
I can't.
Now they kind of roll over a bit closer here to.
Yeah, let's see that.
So that you see the view of it.
Oops, I spotlighted the wrong person. Just a second.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Nice work. I love it.
And the other one that you see behind there is a Wurlitzer Model 512 harp made probably around 1930 that I'm completely overhauling. And you'll see that I have the soundboard taken out. It started yesterday.
Whoa.
The old soundboard failed. And that is the carcass inside that I have to put a new soundboard into.
Wow.
So I don't only just do piano, but I do harps as well.
Very cool. That's fun. Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to share a video with everyone here. So this is kind of off topic. This is sort of pseudo on topic here. I have a friend who he does modular synthesizers, and he recently partnered with this young lady named Emily Hopkins, and she is just she's got like over 150,000 YouTube followers. And she does all kinds of cool things with her harp. She plugs them into like effects pedals and stuff like that. And so my friend created a set of effects, like a modular synth setup, so that she could plug in. So this woman, her name is Emily Hopkins. Yeah. So hey, harps are cool. And by the way, I'm here in Chicago, and I've known that Lyon and Healy is here, who is it? They're known for both pianos and harps. These days, they're maybe even more known for harps. And I've been meaning to go, visit them. I called them one time. I was like, hey, you want to be on a show, and like a lot of people, they didn't know what I was talking about, so they probably just ignored me. But I've been driving by it lately, the actual headquarters for Lyon and Healy, just incidentally. So I think I'm going to get out the car, walk in there one day soon, and maybe we'll get a chance to connect with them. I think that would be pretty cool, and we could see some harps. Yeah. All right. So let's see here. See if there's anybody else in the waiting room that we're missing. Just give me 1 second here. Yep, we got a bunch of folks. So let's make sure they can join us. And then I will put in. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Glenn. That's awesome.
Yeah. Just before we get started, that's my 1915 Steinway D. That I have completely rebuilt and refinished. And I have a Wessel Nickel and Groves accent inside that. So that could be a topic for future if you're interested.
Yeah, I would love that. Let's be in touch. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, you got my email, so we can talk there. Anyway, I'll unmute.
Awesome. Thank you. And then for those of the folks that are out on socials and Facebook and YouTube and whatnot, I'm going to put a message in the chat about how you can come here and join us on the Zoom call. It's on the Zoom call, and I'll put the registration link in there in case people want to jump in. But yeah, I think it's about time we can sort of get started here. I'm going to spotlight our guest for today as well as myself, and then we'll get rolling in here. So it's gonna be an exciting day. All right, so spotlight there. We'll add this spotlight here. Should be able to see us both. And let's do an official welcome to the show. So, yeah, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world, including manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at our craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And I'll also mention here up front, if you want to register for Piano Tech Radio Hour, it makes it a lot easier for you to join us every week. And you can also get the recordings of these sessions. So we finally have a little short link for that. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. And you can also find our podcast where we release archival sessions at pianotechradio.com. So now let's introduce our guest. Her name is Hanna Reimann. She has a lineage tracing back to Beethoven. Actually, never got into that with you. Would love to hear about that. She's played classical music and sang in folk and rock ensembles since she was a child. Over the course of her varied career, she has played concert piano at Lincoln Center, fronted a punk band in Japan, appeared in over 20 independent films, directed the documentary My Father's House, A Journey of Love and Memory, and created a 10-plus year retrospective of the music of Joni Mitchell. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she created the International Stretto Piano Festival for artists who perform on pianos with narrower than standard keys for smaller hands. The New Yorker calls her an uncanny interpreter of Joni Mitchell's canon, and the Wall Street Journal says she's a musician on a mission. And we will hear more about that mission today. But Hanna, welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. It's really great to have you here.
Hello there. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Of course. Yeah. And I'm just letting in some more folks. We got a good turnout today. I think we got some of your community joining us today, which is really fun. So you had mentioned to me before we started that you thought it might be cool for us to pull up a video on YouTube of a gentleman named Joseph Hoffman playing some Rachmaninoff. Do you want to tell us why before or after we take a look at it?
I'll say a couple of words now. So,
okay.
And then I'll say maybe a couple of words afterwards. Joseph Hoffman was one of Sergei Rachmaninoff's friends, but he was diminutive. And as everyone knows, Rachmaninoff was enormous. And he's one of my heroes. So I'll just lead with that and let's listen to him play.
Yeah, awesome. All right, let's get over to that video. It's gonna be fun. And here we go. It's a good place to stop. Nice little clip, but let's talk about that. So yeah, tell us a little bit more again about why you think this is a great way to start the show.
All right. Well, I am here to tell you all that a new era in piano innovation has arrived and that there are people all over the world playing pianos with narrow keys, just like Joseph Hoffman did in the 1920s and 30s. The Steinway Piano Company made several pianos with narrower keys for him because he wanted them and they were more comfortable for him. And he could play his friend Sergei Rachmaninoff's music in a much more, in the same way that Rachmaninoff could, proportionately the same way. So he has been my hero since I was a student, and I can't wait to tell you more about him and the adventure that I've been on.
Awesome. So you've been doing this thing called Stretto Piano Concerts, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about why you created it in the first place. It's a lot of trouble to put on a production even like this online. I could just get on Zoom, but you're doing live productions and things like this. Why is it worth the effort? Why have you been doing this?
Well, it really is a dream that I had when I was a student, when I had my piano rebuilt to have smaller keys in 1997. And I'd always envisioned a concert series that could be all over the world, where people are playing pianos with little keys, just so that people know that they exist. So the series is a year-round concert series that gives performers a choice of key size. And I would like there to be 2 pianos in the hall. And one of them has a 5.9-inch octave instead of a 6.5-inch octave piano. I really wanted to give the broadest number of people the greatest amount of time to try my piano and other pianos and to play concerts with it and to see what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we've got a fiscal sponsor, and I'm starting to accept tax-deductible donations. And the point will be to rent a small hall in New York City so we can have people come and visit and play concerts whenever they'd like.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know, having lived in New York City, I'm in Chicago area now, but I have my business in New York City, and renting a small hall is no small feat. Just real estate is it's a big deal to kind of get stuff like that going. So I understand it's a project to do that, and then get pianos in there and out of there or whatever. So tell us why the word stretto is used. Is that something that you brought into the lexicon, or where does this word stretto come from?
Well, once I had 2 co-artistic directors running the festival with me. And by the way, they are 2 amazing pioneers for the same cause. They both own pianos with narrower keys. One is a very accomplished professor and pianist at Southern Methodist University in Texas, Carol Leone. And the other is Rhonda Boyle, who lives in Australia, who is just incredibly productive online with the network of people playing these pianos and wanting them. So I became acquainted with them, and Carol thought of the word stretto. I wanted us to brainstorm and think of a word that we could call the festival that would, let it be memorable. And she thought of that word. We thought of some other things, and we decided that was the best word. So thank you, Carol.
Yeah, no, it does have a, even hearing the story of you, kind of coming up with the term, branding's really important. It does have a nice weight. Yeah, go ahead.
It means narrow in Italian.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it has this weight to it, like it's been around for years. Oh yeah, stretto pianos, that's a thing, right? So let's continue that kind of feeling around the term. I think you did a good job in choosing that. So let's see here. The pianos like that you're going to use for this concert hall. I'm not sure if you mentioned or not. I know you have a piano yourself, and I know you've kind of, went through the trouble of you become like a piano. I don't know if you call it rental. I don't even know if you're making money off it, but you're like getting this piano in spaces. Like, is that what you're going to do for this concert hall that you're planning for? Just kind of utilize your piano, or do you hope to get some sort of outsourced manufacturing and donation, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think really the only way to begin right now is for me to loan both of my pianos. This is my Hamburg Steinway that I have in my home. So I have 2 pianos. One is an American Steinway that was built in 1900. It's a Model C, so it's 7'4". And that's, the one that my parents bought me when I became a professional in the 1990s. I was still a student, and I had it rebuilt to have a second keyboard. So that piano actually has 2 keyboards, and one is 5.9-inch octave. The other one is a 6.5-inch octave. So we would have both of these pianos in there, and people could just walk in and try both of them, know what feels better for them. And I just decided, after I gathered enough information and I know about the problems about producing these pianos, that would be the fastest way to have a venue. And I'd like those pianos to be replaced by a manufacturer who'd be willing to put similar ones in, the next 2 to 3 years or something like that.
Right. That makes sense. And you've said it has 2 keyboards. Now I haven't really, maybe I have seen the piano in some of the pictures you sent me, but I guess the way, when you say it has 2 keyboards, some people might think, oh, it's almost like an organ where you have one and then you have another on top of it. But I think what you're saying is it's basically, you can take out the whole action stack, I guess, of
Yes.
one type of width. And then you just take your other action stack and you slip it in. It's kind of like putting your floppy disk into the, for our anachronistic technology thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I purchased a second set of hammers and all the action parts. And,
Wow.
So I have a big box that has the second keyboard with the second set of action parts. That's the fastest way to make a change.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty cool that it's not as complicated as it might seem. That's the one that's interesting too. You're calling it a Stretto piano, but it's a Stretto keyboard. So potentially, we can talk about it or not, but I think that, there's this potential that you don't even necessarily need to have a whole piano that's modified this way. You could be keeping these keyboards on hand for folks. Yeah.
That is exactly what is happening. And that's how all these people all over the world have pianos with narrow keys. There's a company in Pennsylvania called DS Keyboards, and they make keyboards that will fit into Yamaha and Steinway and a couple of other upright piano companies, Hylon and Walter. So, especially for the Yamaha Grands, it's easy. You could take one DS keyboard and move it from a C6 in one state to a C6 in another state. You can move share the keyboard. And that's one thing that I might be getting involved in here in New York, because I know someone who's got a Yamaha who may be interested in one of these. So I have a dialogue with David Steinbuehler, who owns that company.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, and by the way, we got a handful of folks on this call. And then of course, people will review the recording and the podcast and all this stuff, who are like in charge of a set of university pianos. Right. And so I could see, it is hard to find budget at a university, and this may not be at the top of the list, but maybe, if you get an artist coming in and they kind of lobby, hey, I'm going to come in here. Hey, we want to get XYZ artists. They're amazing, but here's what they want us to do, Yeah.
And DS is now a nonprofit foundation, and they loan keyboards. So the expense is not as great as it would be as if everyone was spending $10,000 for a keyboard. I mean, they really, Carol Leone and Rhonda Boyle and David Steinbuehler, their network of people, they've really got a system in place where this is happening. It's not like we're waiting for it to happen. It is happening. People are playing these keyboards all over the world. David is back ordered for a year, I think. He can put out one keyboard every month, and he sends them, far away to places like Brazil and Australia and Germany and South Africa. It's really quite remarkable.
Very cool. Yeah. And we've engaged with a lot of technicians on this call will have used the Rayburn Cyber Tuner. It's a gentleman named Dean Rayburn, and his whole family's doing like interesting stuff in the piano industry, piano hammers and stuff, tuning hammers. But they recently bought a keyboard manufacturing kind of operation over the past maybe 5 years or so. So, that might be an interesting partner, right? With Rayburn, don't want to disrupt the existing partnerships in place, but Rayburn, I know, is in the business now of creating piano keyboards, and, maybe they're not aware of this potential market. Try to get them involved. So how about we take a look at your actual piano, so we can get a sense of, what it looks like and how this manifests. I'm going to share screen again, and then you can kind of explain to us what we're seeing here. So give it a second to load. So yeah, so this is your Steinway piano. So tell us what we're seeing and give us any explanation we might need. We can also, I know we got another close-up of the keyboard coming up after that.
Yeah, well, you've noticed the very wide cheek blocks, and I told you about the octave span, but this is a 44-inch wide keyboard with 88 keys, as opposed to a 48-inch wide keyboard with 88 keys. So it sounds, I think, exactly alike or almost exactly alike. I've never measured the dBs, but it's a big, loud piano, and even with the little keys, it sounds and feels great. That's the room where I used to produce the concerts in from 2018 until 2021. What else can I tell you?
Let's take a look at the keyboard up close. Hey, man, there might not be that much. And maybe that's part of the appeal here. Like we said, it's just kind of, just looks a lot like a normal piano. And I think us technicians, it's so easy for, I think, us to wrap our heads around this. And I think we'll go into more detail about the construction of it. And you even have like a patent around this, and there's an interesting story behind how that came about. But yeah, it just looks like, oh yeah, I think I get it, right? Take the old keyboard out, modify a few things, put the new keyboard in, make sure it's fitting snugly and everything's aligned properly, and you're ready to roll. So I think I think maybe the next interesting thing to cover would be just going into more detail about why you think there's a need to have like this hall that you're planning for. What's that going to do for us?
Well, I discovered having two piano festivals, the first one online, and then the second one hybrid, online and in person, in New York City. I think we had 8 concerts in New York. Well, the first festival had 18 pianists on 4 continents online, and the second one had 32 pianists on 5 continents online and hybrid, and a lot of those concerts that were recorded and put online had audiences because the worst of the pandemic was over, and there were vaccines, etc. So I thought there's some momentum going on here, and we really need to continue the momentum. I also found that some well-known players, they have years of schedule for their concerts and engagements and things they have to do. They need flexibility. They need to be able to come somewhere where they want to come in a major city where a piano is available. So I thought it's time for me to start having year-round concerts in person, and they can also be online, where people could come in, try the piano, and give a concert, and 1 concert a month. It will give high tier and top tier performers the ability and the flexibility to try a Stretto instrument, and it will just be a much more active way to promote this keyboard, which so many people don't know about.
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, I think it's about the engagement. It just makes me think of yeah, go ahead.
One other thing I don't want to forget, kids. I want to get the kids in the door and have the youngest virtuoso players experiment and see, how many pieces they could play that they've never played before, because their hands just aren't reaching the octave or the ninth yet. Yeah. They're waiting to play their Mendelssohn, Brahms, and then suddenly they can dive in. So we actually have a very young, a 6-year-old Chinese pianist who's playing Chopin waltzes now. And I'm like, I've invited her to the festival, and I want to have a really great kids festival and year-round kids concerts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I have a 5-year-old son, and he's taking cello lessons. Right. And yeah, I've always loved the cello as an instrument. I thought if I played a string instrument, I might play the cello, but I'm just learning all the details about a cello, how important it is to hold the bow correctly and this stuff. And also I'm learning they have different sizes of cellos for different ages. I mean, that makes a ton of sense. You could see like a little kid trying to play this big cello be very, almost impossible. But yeah, they have like, he started on a 1/10, and then you go to a 1/8, and then you go to a 1/4, right? And go to 1/2. Yeah, it just makes sense, right? And I think that what you see here in a case like this, like a lot of things, we have just a kind of a technological barrier, like a practical barrier that probably existed for many years. Although when we talk about just putting a keyboard in and out, you do think to yourself, hey, we could have been doing this right? If for many years, but for whatever reason, somebody didn't invent the wheel or whatever. So, but now we have it. It actually seems, and we have the manufacturing capabilities. Things can be done much more quickly and easily. There's also another company that might be an interesting partner, Wessel, Nickel, and Gross, which was mentioned previously, I believe, by Glenn. He said he had a Wessel, Nickel, and Gross Action in his piano. Those are, I think I forget, they're synthetic material. I believe it's carbon fiber, but they use technology to create a new type of action that is much more stable than your traditional piano action made of wood. And, they're in the business, and for them, it's just a matter of, changing the specifications on the designs that get put out there. So that's another very interesting place to look. All right, so we've got a nice sizzle reel that lasts a few minutes here, maybe a good 5 minutes, but it's pretty engaging. So if you don't mind, maybe we'll jump to that and take a look at that before we move on to some more questions. Is that cool?
I would love that.
Awesome. All right, let's bring that up. Sharing the sound. Ready to roll. Here we go.
Have you ever wanted to experience what it's like to play a piano that has narrow keys? Keys that could cut your practice time in half and make stretches feel easy? My name is Hannah Ryman, and I'm delighted to introduce you to the world of Stretto pianos. Stretto means narrow in Italian.
Last couple of months, I've had the great joy of working on a keyboard which has a 6-inch octave rather than the standard 6.5. Immediately, I noticed a difference. Such a freeing experience to play what I wanted. And so I think just having that experience really convinced me that perhaps piano technology needed to evolve a little bit. It still had some ways to go.
I have found that on this smaller keyboard, I've been able to execute various musical ideas and technically challenging sections with much more ease and control.
The repertoire that I'm performing, I do normally perform on a regular size keyboard.
Nesse teclado eu senti relaxamento mesmo, né? Estado de relaxamento constante que eu não tinha sentido num teclado normal, né? Desse tamanho padrão. Uma outra coisa interessante são os saltos também, porque os saltos geralmente eles são difíceis, porque eu sempre penso um pouco menos, né? Então os esbarros vêm porque eu precisava sempre abrir um pouco mais, né? E nesse teclado era mais orgânico, assim, eu ia no lugar certo porque eu acho que tinha a ver com o tamanho do meu corpo, com o tamanho dos meus braços, não sei. Então isso foi bem legal de perceber.
I work almost every day with students who are dealing with playing-related injuries, or simply the frustrations of wrapping their small hand spans around stretchy intervals at the piano.
I came at this blood with an I must conquer the world kind of attitude, which is how I thought of most of piano because I couldn't reach an octave. My hand would stretch so far that I'd actually be playing the black keys in between with my palm. I am flying.
But honestly, aren't there many other more worthwhile challenges to embrace as a pianist and a musician? To say that these narrow or stretto keyboards have changed my musical life is really an understatement.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, the Second International Stretto Festival.
I created the International Stretto Piano Festival and Stretto Piano Concerts in 2021 to serve a rapidly growing demographic of musicians who want to play pianos that are narrower than conventional ones.
We're so thankful for the opportunity, and we hope that this festival encourages more institutions to purchase the instrument, rent the instrument, and have it available for their faculty and students.
This idea of having narrower keys gives a lot of hope to the future generations of pianists who have small hands.
It has been such a joy to be able to play and perform the pieces that I never would have been able to otherwise.
There's solid evidence that shows just how many pianists are effectively handicapped by small hands. 87% of adult women, 25% of men, and most children. Just think about how many pianists around the world that represents.
You've come together to offer people a choice. I also want to mention that StrettoPianoConcerts.org now has nonprofit status, raising money to create a venue like this one where you're sitting now. And if anyone would like to try the Stretto piano to see how it feels in their hands, one of the things I wanted to offer at this festival was live audiences to have the opportunity, if they're pianists, to know how it feels to play smaller keys.
Be part of our exciting community that celebrates narrow piano keys, broad minds, and knows no boundaries.
You're muted.
I'm muted again. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Great presentation. And like really also some incredible piano players, like really good stuff. One of the things it reminds me of is that, along the path of learning to be a piano technician, I heard this, and I'm sure a lot of us have heard this. Our job is to sort of remove all obstacles in the way of the pianist making beautiful music, right? So if it's hard to play the keyboard, you just want to make it easier, right? If it's, if it doesn't sound quite right, or the tone is not sufficient to kind of really allow them to shine, you want to get that. And you just basically want the music to come through from their body and straight out into the air, and remove it even any sense that there's an instrument in between, right? And this just seems like it's right in line with that mission. It's just another obstacle for somebody to make beautiful music. Let's get that out of the way. So can you explain how these pianos that we're looking at get put together? Is there like one manufacturer of this? How are these, the ones that are in existence, how do they become into existence?
Well, I had my piano independently built by Sujatri Reisinger at Clavier House here in New York City back in 1997. And that was a piano from the Kluge keyboard company that makes keyboards for Steinway pianos. And I just, at that particular time, I wanted Steinway parts in my Steinway piano. I was a piano geek. I was like studying all the action parts. I wanted to have the top of the line at that particular time. But most of the keyboards that are out there were made by David Steinbuehler and DS Keyboards. He has been the most industrious, and there's like 190 keyboards have been made over the past several decades. And most of the people in the videos that you saw were playing pianos that were retrofitted with DS keyboards. There were a couple of other ones. Karolinka de Brie, she's not in the sizzle reel, but she's from the Netherlands, and she has a Kaduk keyboard made in the Netherlands that was put into a Steinway M. And Linda Gould played various instruments, not on the sizzle reel. She plays lots of different sizes of, lots of different kinds of keyboards, including a new 88 key weighted controller made by Piano Arc. And she and Kathy Strauss, her business partner, are working with Piano Arc so that there are electronic controllers out there that are narrower. And she's a really remarkable pioneer herself. She and I and Carol, we were among the first people to have our pianos rebuilt many years ago. So, there's a variety there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see there's some comments and questions in the chat. I think maybe their best approaches we'll leave them to the end, but there's definitely some interesting questions. And I have some just interesting stuff as well, maybe to reflect on. But yeah, maybe we'll leave it for a little bit later to get into those. What it seems like, yes, it's hard to sort of manufacture custom sizing for everyone. Yes, we're getting closer to that in today's modern day and age. I've even heard of clothing brands where their goal is to like be able to fit every single size from the narrowest of the narrow to the biggest of the big, right? And have it just be, aesthetically pleasing and enjoyable to wear those clothes. But what kind of sizes are we talking about? What are the measurements of octave spans for a typical stretto piano?
So the octave span of conventional is 6.5, and the two sizes that are most widely used by this community are 5.5 inches and 6.0 inch octave. Mine is like a little bit smaller. There's a Steinway has made them at 6.25. So, they're all around 5.5 or 6.0. And you might know that piano keyboards from company to company are not exactly the same size. They might be a few millimeters different.
Right. Yeah. And you gave us, I guess this is did you personally gather this research here? This is kind of like piano keyboard size. Where did this come from? You gave me this chart.
This was so exciting for me. So I was a bit of a nut. I mean, I went running around to everybody that I thought could help me with this back in the 90s. And I knew a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Stuart Pollins. And I said, I want to come and measure the keyboards. And he said, of course you can't do that, Hannah. We can't just let you come in with a tape measure, but I'll do it for you. And he had 89 measurements made for me, and I just put I think I put 41 on this page because I thought it was just too much for this kind of presentation to have pages and pages, but I can share that with people. Maybe we'll put it on Stretto Piano Concert's website.
Yeah, for sure.
And he gave me the measurements in 3 octave spans in millimeters, and for our presentation I calculated it. If you look down towards the bottom, the octave span gets closer and closer to 6.0, 6.25. As just kind of the average mid 1800s, what people were playing, like 1700s, 1800s. They're playing a 6.2, maybe it's a little bit less, a little bit more. But the closer you get to, 1940, do we have more on there? There's a few missing from this list, but it goes all the way to 1940, and it's all 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Standard was beginning to set in. Things were changing from the Industrial Revolution. Franz Liszt made his requests to have pianos a certain size, including the keys, and he was a very big white man. So this was one of the most fun projects that I had while I was researching, and I really still thank Stuart for helping me with this.
Yeah, very cool. Anything else you gleaned from the history of keyboard sizes from gathering this data, or?
Well, the most interesting thing was, apart from the fact that keyboards, harpsichords, clavichords, organs, and pianos built before the end of the 19th century exhibited a huge deal of variety. There were just so many different sizes and many different numbers of keys on pianos. But establishing the octave spans of keyboard instruments depended on the size of the inch in different countries. And there was a different size for the Viennese inch than the English inch. And the inch in the Netherlands was different from the inch in Italy because people were different sizes. They had different ethnic heritages. And that, that's normal. Like you were saying about cellos, violins, violas.
Yeah, even with cello.
They fit what fit them.
Right. I've learned there's even, we actually made the mistake. We went to, I got a friend who has a cello, well, it's a violin shop, right? Does all kinds of string instruments. And I called him up. I said, hey, we're graduating from a 1/10 to a 1/8 in cello. And he, sure, we'll get one for you. And then I showed up and they said, well, this is a European 1/8 cello. we weren't sure whether you need a European or a Suzuki, so just let us know, right? And then I take it to the teacher, and the teacher said, yes, we needed a Suzuki, right? So even there, you see like standards across different countries. And I know this too, in my own household, I demand that a foot is the size of my foot. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, that's really funny. I think that's why we always laugh at people who continue to use non-metric measurements. Metric is such like a nice standardized system that we could all just adapt, right? All right, cool stuff. Well, maybe it might be interesting to pop up another couple of slides here. Let me see if I can pull them up. Let's get there. Yeah, you've got some other data. I think that might be fun to share with people.
Well, and I want to point out that Carol Leone and Rhonda Boyle and Stretto Piano Concert's new administrator, Julia Furlan, provided a lot of great information for this presentation. So this is from Carol Leone's article, Size is Key, that was found in Clavier Companion in 2015. And you can see here, females are blue, males are red. And we all know that women are generally smaller than men. And there's a marked inequality of key size for women in terms of what's available on a large scale right now. Okay, so you can see down at the bottom, the smaller keyboards, where women fit into it and where men fit into it. And right now, it doesn't really cover the demographics properly.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. All right, let's see. I think you had another.
Yeah,
yeah.
About gender imbalance. This one is kind of a hypothetical chart predicting that with narrow keyboards, there's more ease in playing for much closer to 100% of all hand sizes. So I believe red signifies the ease of playing on the top with the conventional keys and on the bottom with narrower keys. And you can see there's just far fewer people with the smaller keys that will be uncomfortable with the piano.
Got it. And this is just kind of, if you take the samples from what we saw in the previous graphs and kind of map that onto kind of playability.
I think it's a projection. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. And this is actual data gathering, right? From competitions. Right. This is fascinating.
Yes, this is actual data, and it's very easy to see. So the women are pink, the men are blue, and down the last two graphs, you can see that it's just the Bach and the Mozart piano competitions where there's lots of first prize winners that are women. But for what's probably just lots of larger, more stretchy repertoire, most of the winners are men. So that's first prize winners. And then the next slide is total prize winners. And it's similar.
Yeah.
So that I really hand it to these ladies for providing me with these graphs, as you get a very quick look into what's going on out there in the world of piano playing.
Yeah, when you look at data like this, it's way much more clear cut, even than people talk about athletics and the difference between, male and female athletics and there are such marked differences between just kind of muscle mass, like, averages among men and women, stuff like that. And you could see why it'd be hard for men and women to compete in the same race, right? Or same sport, right? But here it's like, well, if you just make the keyboard size smaller, then that would make the competition. There's really nothing special probably about these men besides the fact that it's just a little bit easier to play the piano if these particular types of pieces. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, the playing field changes, right? So this you can see with age, as people get older and their hands get bigger, there's a real disparity here. This is comparing competitions for strings to piano competitions with a view to how the body grows as we age. As the hands get larger in adulthood, women are at a disadvantage with keys that are too big for them compared to men. And there's more equality, or, in terms of the teens and the adults with strings, they're winning more competitions than men are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going back to that other example that we gave about stringed instruments and even having the various sizes and things like that. Tell me more about your history kind of with this project in general. There had to have been like a key moment when you took this on, right? You weren't born with this passion. You probably didn't even notice it, the need, until you were an adult, right? And kind of saw these discrepancies. But how did this become your passion project?
Well, yeah, you're right. I never thought there was anything wrong with me. I never felt inadequate at the piano. I was just like, well, when am I going to be playing Brahms? When am I going to, you'll grow into it. But I never quite grew into it. You know, I played music from all these different eras, and I started to play repertoire that I thought this would be a lot easier if the piano was smaller, but I didn't really register it. I just kept playing. So, you know, in the 1990s, I was a young concert piano student with about 25 students of my own, also who had little hands. And I was on the piano faculty of a school called the Diller Quayle School of Music. I was at the end of working with one teacher, and he said to me, you know, you're playing great now. You can play whatever you want, but your hands are a little small. Why don't you find a Joseph Hoffman piano? And he told me that Steinway & Sons had built pianos for Hoffman to accommodate his hand size. So I was like super excited about this because, you know, I was not interested in playing this like Paderewski, you know, Rachmaninoff, Scriabin. I was like, oh, why should I do that if I can have a piano that's going to help me save time? Because, you know, we do this, little people, we study arm technique and arm weight. And so I was really excited about finding a Hoffman piano. And back in those days, you could really just call people up on the phone and have useful real-time conversations with them. And I was already acquainted with people at Steinway & Sons. I was a educational partner. I helped sell pianos to my families, and I just called the presidents up. I talked to dozens of people, including Lloyd Meyer, who's no longer living. He owned Renner USA, and he was a retired Steinway president. I talked to Henry Steinway. I talked to Bob Dove, Frank Mazurko, Ron Losby, and many, many other people. And I started to becoming known as the young lady who wanted a Hoffman piano. And I, you know, I researched, and I asked them if they would find a Hoffman piano for me, but they asked me to find it. So I started calling all over the country whenever there was a lead, and it was very time consuming.
Yeah, but you put in the work. Yeah, that's really fascinating. And a lot of these names are people that we know of. You know, we hear these names in our conversations, Lloyd Meyer, things like that. Definitely, this is right up our alley in terms of what goes on. So, so you found out that Hoffman pianos was like this type of thing that you could particularly access, and you know, where was I think you just reached some dead ends at some point, right? Like, how did this develop?
I actually called Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. in California because, you know, Ephraim Zimbalist, the violinist, was friends with Hoffman. He inherited one of his pianos. I waited, they measured it, 6.5-inch octave, you know, 48-inch keyboard. It was very frustrating. So I went to Henry Steinway. I made a couple of appointments with him, and he said, oh, we burned all those keyboards after Hoffman died.
Oh my gosh.
Going to have to deal with making this size for this person and that size for that person. Standardization was the only thing we're interested in when it comes to piano keys.
Yeah.
And I said, but Mr. Steinway, like, what about people like me who want to play big stuff? Oh, just forget about it. You know, it was really like, I was shocked. I was really shocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm sensing there's a big thing here that I'm taking away, and that is, and there's something about the terminology. Again, we talked about branding and how you approach this stuff. Saying that you want a stretto piano, you want to manufacture pianos with narrower keys is different necessarily than saying we want keyboards with narrower keys, right? But also saying keyboards, it's kind of confusing because you're like, is it a electronic keyboard? Like, we want keyboards with smaller keys. Like, it's hard to rally around that. But I think there's something around the exposure to the simplicity of it being a keyboard, because this could be very interesting, right? I could see, you know, if you know, it's, I don't know if it's made to order. I mean, it's certainly a manufacturer, when they think about designing a piano with smaller keys, is intimidating if it's an entire piano. But if they could say, oh, well, we have these different models, and we've got a few keyboards that we set aside for those different models, and we ship them out if people want them. So it could be an upgrade, right? Oh, hey, you go to the store, hey, you like the piano, and then the salesperson says, oh, I noticed, no offense, but your hands are a little bit smaller. We do have smaller size keyboards for these pianos. If you're interested, here's the process, and it's maybe a little bit unfair that maybe there might be an upcharge, and you try to dissolve that type of thing. But it's certainly a whole different matter than asking a manufacturer to like make this entire piano that's different and wondering whether it's going to sell or make them money or not. Yeah. So, but did you make some progress? I mean, I think you made some progress with Steinway or something. Where did you get?
Well, they were very kind to me, and they were very encouraging in many ways, but they were always telling me, Hannah, you do the work. Just keep working on it. Just keep working. Like, they wanted me to do the work. They wanted me to travel and to, try a piano in Canada, try pianos. I actually discovered the pianos in Japan, but nobody in America knew about them in the 90s. I went to Japan and played pianos with narrower keys that another pioneer, Yoshinao Nakada, had inspired in Kawai and Yamaha pianos. But the Kawai and Yamaha reps in America had never seen these catalogs that the smaller keyboards were. I showed them to them for the first time. So it was a really big lesson in seeing how these things happen, how busy they are, how they have their timelines, what's important, what's not important, how there needs to be a global effort in order for this to really take place. And, I have a feeling we're going to run out of time, aren't we, Ethan?
We may, yeah. We're kind of like, let's see, there's more we can get to. We could move to some questions. We have about 5 minutes left on the table here. So I know we have like some slides, whatever. What do you think?
What I want to say is there's so many more stories that I can share with you. There's, my patent and other things. But basically, what it boils down to is that performance needs to lead the way. Because the manufacturing industry, or this is my opinion, what I've learned from talking to all these people over 30 years, continuing with this, researching that, meeting wonderful people like Carol and Rhonda, and meeting these incredible pianists all over the world who passionately want to play these instruments. That's what's going to speak to people the way that Liszt did when he said, I am the concert. The concert is me. And he said, I need you to change this. I need you to change that. I really think communicating through the music is what's going to make the biggest changes. It's just, people have too much to do. They have years of timelines. They have supply chain issues. They have their agendas. Pulling them onto an agenda by talking is not going to be as powerful as pulling them on with the power of music. And I just know it from what I've seen. I just know it.
Yeah, I could see there's a certain strategy making it even more performative, right? Like the audience, they're there for the music, right? And going to see an artist that they really enjoy, and you're going to have those audience members that are empathetic. You have those people that can't reach things in the top cupboard and they have to ask for someone to put a stool or whatever, they're just like, oh yeah, I feel for this person. I want to hear their beautiful music. And at the front of the concert, there's like a big deal made out. Oh, we're going to take the keyboard. We're going to put this special thing in, people, what's that? And you just talk about it for a minute. I could see artists really taking the charge here, making it part of the show, almost getting the audience empathetic. And
we've done. I did it, between 2018 and 2021. We had some really magical moments like that, and sure there will be many more.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see if we can wind it down here. I do have a raised hand from Barbara. Let's see here, Barbara. Did you have a question that you would like to? If you'd like to unmute, go ahead and just say what you'd like to say. We'll see if we can incorporate it.
Well, I'm using my wife's Zoom account. My name is
Barbara.
Justin Cole.
I like that. Yeah.
First
nice to meet you, Justin.
Congratulations. Hi, Hannah. I miss you, and you and I have a promised luncheon date, I think, in the future. Hopefully this spring. I'm sure Alicia De La Rocha would have loved to. Did you ever discuss this with her when she was alive? Because
I did.
And Herman Diaz would be very proud of you.
I put my hand up to hers like this backstage, and they were exactly the same size. And she said, "My dear, I have been waiting for this my whole life."
Really?
And I said, "Are you going to do it with me? Can we put our heads together?" And she looked at me and she said, "I'm too old. You do it." She said what everybody said to me. You do it. You do it.
Nice. And when you have a Stretto type keyboard, do the other dimensions of a say a Concert D, do they change?
No.
9-foot Concert D is still a 9-foot Concert D. It's just more accommodating keys.
The keys are the only thing that's different. You just
Yep.
take the keyboard out and put the other keyboard in.
And have you approached, I'm sure gingerly, if you did, competitions?
Well, that's something we could have a longer discussion about with people on our team, Carol Leone, and she's had one in Dallas. There's some great stories about that. We would love to share more about that with you. And she's really the expert.
Yeah, thanks for your questions, Justin. Appreciate that. Sorry, I have to move on because we usually end right at the hour. But I talked to you, Hannah, about the fact that we might not get through all this, and of course, I think we'll have you back. Schedules accommodating at some point here in the near future, I'm sure. So we can certainly continue the conversation. People ask the question, what do these look like? We have your patent, at least we could take a look at it. Some people were asking, I'll go through the comments here at the end so we can just get a sense of what people are interested in, and then maybe for the next session, we can go through, make sure we cover some of these things. Well, first of all, there's quite a few comments. So this is great. Nice, engaging session. Larry Lobel just made a comment about Joseph Hoffman being an accomplished inventor, working closely with Steinway in the factory and playing an important role in developing the Steinway's accelerated action. That's kind of cool. Jim Kelly wrote me a direct message. It's a project called PASK. I believe Steinbuehler has these keyboards. And somebody else mentioned PASK, piano alternate size keyboards. Standboard keyboards are built for men and people with smaller hands. Injuries have a hard time, just kind of like as we had gone through. And then also Peter said he'd love to see the inside of a piano, see the angles of the backs of the keys towards the rest of the action. I don't know if you could, maybe you can just open up your fall board there and take a few photos for the next one. That could be interesting. I know
there's some images, right? There's images from the Piano Today article. You can see.
Oh yeah, are there? Let's see here. We could share that real quick, or we could save it for next time. Let's see here. We can give a quick preview of some things that we might be able to share again next time. Let me share.
The of the wood in one of those photos.
Yeah, so here's an article from Piano Today that was about there's an article within this publication that we see more of that features. You could see the angles of the keys are much different. They're at more askew here to the wood. Of course, that could probably affect the rigidity of the keys and the strength, but it seems relatively functional. There's this article, and we can briefly show the patent, I think, just so people can see, it's really just kind of pushing the keys together and just changing the angles of the key sticks at which they go to the other ends of under the action there. So, it's pretty simple. I'm sure there's some engineering issues in terms of making sure they're strong and stable, but totally approachable. Let me see here. A jump from 6.5 to 5.5 might be too much, but 6.5 to 6 could be not so drastic, says Glenn. There's a website link here, paskpiano.org, that talks about how you can adapt quickly, that Kathy shared. Pat Wilbur asked how you get wider cheek blocks. We can answer that later, but yeah, that's an interesting question. But Carol Leone, who you mentioned, she has a DS 5.5 in her Steinway D, really well crafted. Action continues to work beautifully. Glenn said there's a variable that cannot be addressed, and that would be the key dip, which of necessity would need to be the same. That would still be a constant. So, I mean, that's interesting, although it probably doesn't bother people with small hands as much. We could do some research around it. But yeah, the actual distance from where the key sits to the bottom of its travel, potentially you could modify things to make that smaller. Yeah, did you have something about that, Hannah?
Well, that's something that my technicians and I worked on my piano quite a bit once we, made it available for public consumption. So I understand that concern is all I wanted to say. And that it's not as big of a deal, but it's topic of personal preference. And for children, of course, if it's not as deep, it's easier, but whatever.
Well, and that's interesting. I think once you engineer the action, you can engineer whatever you'd like to in, and it should fit with everything else. So we have some more comments about, let's see here. Glenn shares his hand span, little details about that. Pat Wilbur's, everybody's measuring their hands now. Here's what I have. Asking if there was more comments about adaptation and how much time they can take to adapt. Seems like it's relatively easy. I mean, I've even played electronic keyboards with, where it's like, there's something, it's not that hard. Like the brain and the motor mechanisms, it's not that hard to kind of get a feel. Yeah.
Harpsichords, organs, switching to piano. I mean, lots of people do it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Interesting stuff. Let's see here. Not all pianos can take a smaller keyboard. That's interesting. Sounds like somebody knows from knowledge here. Asking to see the picture of the keyboard. We took a look at that. Lots of comments. Almost done though here. Hailoon, comments about Hailoon doing alternate keyboards. They're pretty well-known manufacturer, and things about the weight. So yeah, looks like we have a lot more topic of conversation for the next time around. We'd love to thank you for joining us. Before we jump off, I guess let's just make sure people have, and I'll do our little outro and stuff, but let's make sure people have links, places to follow along. I know maybe you have, I think you have like an album that maybe people should check out. Why don't you tell people how to find out more?
Okay, well, if you want to know more about me and my music, www.hannahryman.com, 2 N's in both names. Just look at my name in Ethan's literature. I'm releasing a single on March 10th. I have a crazy week. It's very excited about that. I got a grant that helped me finish that record. I'll be playing the music of Joni Mitchell at 54 Below on March 30th. And I have lots of stuff coming up, which I'll share with you on my website. Just go to my website. Don't forget the PASK Network, PASK, Pianists for Alternately Sized Keyboards, paskpiano.org. There's chock full of information about this stuff if you're interested in it. But also come to stretopianoconcerts.org, because we are stepping up the website now that we have an administrator assistant, Julia Ferlin, who I adore. You can go to it right now and see a little bit more about us and the artists. And we have a festival coming up towards the end of July 2023. So if anybody out there wants to reach out to us, you can do that on my website too, just to save time. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many projects, but I'm just so delighted that there's so many people here. And I really hope we can continue the conversation. I can tell you more about Carol's setup in Texas and other enlightening things that can round out the conversation for the technicians and people who don't know as much as we do about this.
Cool. Well, thanks for wrapping everything up. I made sure and put your website link in the chat as well, so people can click on that. I also put that out on our social streams so that anybody watching on Facebook and YouTube can click those links. And so we're basically there at the finish. And so we've reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. Thanks again to Hannah for joining us today. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, cutting edge instruction for piano industry masters without leaving your home. for those of you that joined us today by signing up for this session individually. You could make your life more convenient. You could subscribe to Piano Tech Radio Hour at $16 a month. You get the recording of today's session in our member area, as well as automatic registration for each week's new session. And you can join there at bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH, all lowercase, no spaces. And of course, we'll see you all again next week. Thanks again to Hannah, and thanks to you all in the audience for joining us today. It's been a blast.
Thank you, Ethan.
Yes. Have a
Thank you
great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.